Tree Farm has a cult reputation, and this LinksDAO event gave us the chance to spend 24 hours seeing what all the talk was about. Our arrival started on a long gravel road that refused to give up the whole picture. We caught snippets, a sliver of fairway between pines, a green perched on a hillside, a stretch of raw ground that looked half wild and half shaped. We kept trying to map it in our heads, and the place kept asking us to wait. And finally, the road bent one last time, and the arrival area came into view. A few Tree Farm staff greeted us with an easy warmth, and the other Links members were right there with them, some familiar, some new, a small moment, but it felt like the trip had finally started. We headed inside the locker room, when we started to notice the personality of the place. Nothing was flashy or staged. It felt like a room put together by people who cared more about golf than decor. We changed our shoes and took a minute to look around. There were photos, sketches, and bits of golf history pinned up in a way that seemed collected over time rather than arranged for show. The dining room overlooked the 18th green and the first tee, so the course was the first thing we saw when we sat down. The room had its own personality, golf photos and old memorabilia on the walls, a couple of TVs running whatever game happened to be on. Tree Farm serves lunch family style at large communal tables, and it immediately fit the feel of a Links event. Conversations blended together quickly, rounds people had played, trips people had taken, plans for future events. We passed dishes back and forth and kept drifting towards the windows, taking in the course between bites. Our bags were already waiting for us on the range when we walked out from lunch. We warmed up and met our caddies, everyone taking a few swings to shake the travel out of our shoulders. Once we'd loosened up a bit, we wandered over to the putting green. It's a broad rolling surface that immediately tells you the greens out on the course won't be simple. Before we headed out, there was one last reminder of how seriously Tree Farm treated pace of play, posted clearly with no room for debate. Then we split into our groups and walked to the first tee together, the kind of small shuffle and chatter that marks the real start of a round. The opener happened to be a par 3, which meant no easing into things. The first swing mattered, and suddenly our round was underway. After that, the round settled into a walk with friends. The land moved in long natural waves across both sides of the ridgeline, and being out there with other Links members made us remember why we joined this club. We'd played great courses together before, so the conversation drifted naturally towards what might have shaped Zac Blair's vision here, what he borrowed, what he bent, what the land suggested on its own. Before we knew it, we'd reached the halfway house. It was unfussy, just like the rest of Tree Farm, and stocked with the kinds of things that made us stop for a minute whether we planned to or not. A tray of pimento cheese, homemade Uncrustables wrapped and ready to go, Gatorade in a can, a few drinks if we needed or wanted one, nothing overdone, nothing trying to impress us, just a quick pause that hit exactly right before we headed back out for the last 9. As we turned back into the home stretch, the course began to build on itself in a way that felt almost musical. 14 through 18 rose the way a good song does when it starts pushing towards its peak, each hole adding a new note, a little more lift, a little more tension. The stretch built naturally, each hole a little better, a little sharper than the one before. It ended up being one of the best closing runs we'd seen anywhere. By the time we reached the 18th tee, it felt like the whole round had been building to that spot, and we couldn't help wishing there were a few more holes waiting. Next to the tee, there's a stump filled with ball markers from people who'd played here and wanted to leave a small piece of themselves behind. We spotted clubs we knew well and others we'd hoped to get to someday. After we sank our last putts and shook hands with our partners and caddies, we ended up in the chairs above the 18th green with a drink. From there, we had a clear look at the last hole and watched the groups behind us work their way in. It was a quiet, steady way to finish the round before we headed inside to trade stories from the day. A little while later, we wandered back out onto the putting green to settle some unfinished business. We played a game of knockout, highest score out, winner choosing the next target. The sun was dropping behind the property as we played, throwing a different light across the course and giving the place a softer, quieter look than it had earlier in the day. It was the right kind of cool down before we headed to our rooms to shower and then back to the clubhouse for another family-style meal. Dinner turned into another round of stories, shots at work, shots we wanted back, courses we kept coming back to, and places still on our lists. When the night finally wound down, we walked the lit path back to our rooms to get ready for the next day. There were no TVs in the rooms at Tree Farm, which said plenty about the place on its own. More time with the people you came with, and a quiet room to rest before the round. Day 2 started with the same walk back up the path toward the clubhouse, but the morning gave it a different feel. Fog sat in the low spots and the rising sun pushed across the ridgeline, making the whole place feel calmer than it had the afternoon before. It had a bit of a summer camp rhythm, people drifting out of their cabins around the same time, falling into the same quiet procession toward breakfast in the course. After breakfast and a quick warm-up, we headed back out for a second round, this time with people we hadn't played with the day before. The morning light revealed angles and moments we'd missed the first time through. When we finished, one last lunch wrapped up the 24 hours. Then it was showers, bags and trunk, and the familiar gravel road back out. the conversation already drifting towards future plans. Being Links members was the reason we were there at all, and the reason the day didn't feel isolated. It felt like one stop on a longer trail of places we get to walk together.